listeners to the Cosmic Confluence podcast, where ancient wisdom, soul medicine, and modern healing intersect. Now, listeners, today's conversation is both deeply personal and cosmically expansive. We are diving into the rich, often misunderstood world of Amanita muscaria, that iconic red capped mushroom most of us have only seen in fairy tales or video games or warning signs. But behind the myth lies a powerful story of healing, resilience, and reinvention. Listeners, my guest, Christian Rasmussen, isn't just a wellness entrepreneur. He's someone who has walked through the fire. After using Amanita to safely taper off benzodiazepines, Christian turned his personal healing into purpose, founding MN Nice Ethnobotanicals, which is a company rooted in sustainability, education, and a deep respect for plant medicine. And as someone who believes that healing is non-linear and it's often mystical, I am excited, listeners, to explore the paradoxes here. How something once demonized can become a sacred ally, and what it means to reclaim health on your own terms. So, let's get into this absolutely beautiful conversation with your host, Sana, here on Cosmic Conference. So, Tristan, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really excited to have you here with us.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for that lovely introduction. That was great.
Kristen, I'm really excited because I am going to delve deep into this for the first time, and thank you so much for bringing this forth for all of us. Um, Before we even talk about how Amanata became a part of your healing path, what did your relationship with mental health and pharmaceuticals look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I dealt with addiction issues throughout my 20s. It was, it all stemmed from self-worth issues, we'll say that, went back to my early teen years. I uh I I was addicted to opiates and I was addicted to benzodiazepines, which are typical anti-anxiety medications, Xanax, Klonopin, Ativan, Valium. And I was a very functional addict. I've always been extraordinarily spiritual, and so I kind of danced in both worlds, so to speak. It was towards the end of my 20s that it really started unraveling, that my life started to unravel, and it- you know, it was either I was gonna go down this path and meet the end of me, or and not to mention that I have big lofty goals and aspirations, and those were becoming out of reach. So it was time to get off of substances. There's also this, very potent spiritual pull to clean my act up. So I got off of opiates, which was, extraordinarily difficult, but I had no idea the magnitude of the pain that I was about to experience getting off of benzodiazepines. They're, I had heard that they're the most difficult substances to get off of in the world. And I kind of, I understood that, but I kind of brushed it off. But yeah, it was unbelievably brutal, we'll say. So I got off them. I actually got off them completely for a year prior to finding the Amanita mushroom, and then we can get into that story. But yeah, so I was also very in tune with plant medicines throughout. I mentioned I was kind of dancing in both worlds, so I would use ceremonially psychedelics and plant medicines even while being in the midst of addiction. But yeah, so my relationship has always been I've always been extraordinarily interested and fascinated in plant teachers, plant medicines. I would spend my teenage years researching different pharmacology and people's experiences with various plant medicines. So yeah, it all started at a really young age. And then getting off of benzos was the impetus to find Amanita, which I had never tried at this point in my life. I always knew about it, but there were so many now I'm understanding. There's so much misinformation and disinformation about it, and people that would, they didn't know how to consume it properly or prepare it properly, so they'd take extraordinarily large doses, which I like to relate to, like, a if a 16-year-old is gonna have a drink of alcohol for their first time or something, and they down an entire bottle of vodka. It's like equivalent to that. So yeah, and then there's just, yeah, so much, as you mentioned, people think it's toxic and poisonous, which is far misconstrued, and yeah, misses the point entirely.
Hmm. And then I'm just quoting it, taking from Wiki around Amanita Muscaria, because this is something I am also exploring for the first time. That um, I'm just quoting that it can cause poisoning, especially in children and those seeking its hallucinogenic effects due to psychoactive compounds like, not sure how shall I pronounce this, but mucimol and ibotenic acid. However,
Yeah, that's perfect.
poisonings are extremely, extremely rare. Now, here I mentioned about the dosage. It's natural that, for someone like, especially in the younger ages of their life, and when they're first time getting exposed to this, it can be a dangerous one to consume due to its high dosage. So what kind of other misconceptions or misinformation have you seen around this particular type of plant medicine?
Yeah, I mean, so that's kind of the base of it, and then it expands on that, we'll say. So, and I'll break down the myths and misconceptions here. So, when and you mentioned ibotenic acid and muscimol or mucimol. When the mushroom is growing naturally, it produces only ibotenic acid, and it produces it. Um, the production of ibotenic acid kind of slows down over time, and over time ibotenic acid converts or decarboxylates into muscimol. So when the mushroom is fresh in the ground, it has an extremely high level of ibotenic acid and very, very little muscimol. One can then, when one dries the mushroom, the ibotenic acid converts even further into muscimol, and then one can prepare it even further by utilizing heat and acidity. Basically, you brew a tea in lemon water, and then that converts a lot more of the ibotenic acid into muscimol. Ibotenic acid in very high doses can make people sick. So that's where a lot of this misconception comes from. And then there have been, well, I call them hit pieces, but studies that, so one of the big studies that people reference is one where they isolated ibotenic acid and injected it into rats' brains, directly into the brain, in copious amounts, like levels that there's no way one could eat that many mushrooms to get that much ibotenic acid in their system. And it's directly into the brain, which bypasses, the body's physiological mechanisms for breaking down compounds, and these injections caused brain lesions in these mice. And they're like, well, ibotenic acid is neurotoxic, it causes brain lesions. Like, well, yeah, if you injected my brain with a copious amount of Advil or ibuprofen, like, it would probably cause a brain lesion. So there's these studies that have been put out that are kind of hit piece studies, done to demonize Amanita even more. And the real actual data suggests and shows that ibotenic acid in the levels that is found in the mushroom is not neurotoxic at all. Like, one would have to eat a copious amount of the mushrooms, like kilos, to actually get any of that neurotoxic effect. So all that said, ibotenic acid in high doses can make one sick. So that's why people aren't eating these mushrooms directly out of the ground. They're consuming them after they've been dried. And then a lot of people convert the ibotenic acid to muscimol even further by boiling in water with some lemon juice. So yeah, that's really where the base of the misconception and myth that they're toxic and poisonous comes from. There's really, like, no, or very little to no recorded deaths in history. There's even conjecture around them, that there was other stuff going on. Um, but yeah, so, and from everything that we've seen, when prepared properly, when utilized properly tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of individuals, it does seem to be extremely, extremely safe.
Hmm. Thank you for addressing that, Christian. Because I sometimes I also wonder that is there the fear around plant medicine? This fear, it does it say more about our collective disconnection from the nature, or it is about just the mushroom itself? So it's
Yeah.
really crucial to address this.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's absolutely it. The fear is a collective manifestation of where we're at as a collective. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's also been propagated throughout recent history. I think really when you get into the history of this mushroom and the place that it's had and kind of maybe guiding the human story, it makes sense that, people in power would want to demonize this mushroom in particular. Because I mean, when you really look into the history, it appears that it was likely Soma in the Vedic hymns, or it was likely utilized by the Essenes and potentially even Yeshua, or Jesus Christ. It seems to have been a part of, if not a large part of, the foundational religions of the world. And the more that I understand the mushroom and the more that I work with it, the more that that makes sense, because it's just so unbelievably powerful, healing. And, I mean, it's called the Christ mushroom in many circles. And I think that that's pretty accurate. Some of the earliest depictions of Adam and Eve have them covering themselves with Amanita mushroom caps as opposed to the fig leaves that we hear about now. And you have countless images of Yeshua, or Jesus Christ, around red cap mushrooms with white dots, or crucifixion images where Jesus has Amanita cap on his head. So there's a lot of evidence that it's played a relatively large role in the human stories unfolding. And if that's the case, it would make sense why individuals, that are looking to hold on to power would want to demonize it.
Mm, absolutely. And Crystal, let's talk about your experience. You mentioned that you got off benzodiazepines with the support of Amanita. So,
Yeah.
what did that transition really feel like in your body, mind, and also your nervous system?
Yeah. Yeah, so I was off of benzos for a year when I found Amanita. It was actually the same 1 year to the day that I found Amanita, and I was it was so unbelievably brutal. I can't even put it into words. There were times where I would say I would rather be strapped to a chair and physically tortured than going through what I was going through. And one of the unique things about benzodiazepine withdrawal that you don't find with other substances is that it can last for it's really brain damage that one's dealing with. It's a damaged GABA and glutamate system, but it can last for years and years. So I was a year off of them entirely. I was still in withdrawal brain damage, and I was, maybe like 5-10% healed, it felt like. And I was contemplating ending my life. It's that bad because I was looking at so many more years of dealing with this. And I was on a hike one day and I found this patch of these mushrooms growing, and they're magnificently beautiful in nature, just absolutely stunning, fairy tale-esque. And there was this unbelievably potent magnetism, a
Mhm.
heart pull towards these mushrooms. And I think one of the things that I like to relate that to is like relationships. Sometimes you meet somebody and there's just like a magnetism towards them. It was like that, but it was the most potent pull I'd ever felt at this point in my life. And so I picked them and I went to the house and I did some research, and I found that they hit the GABA and the glutamate system, the same two systems that benzodiazepines damage. And I also found, I'd known about these mushrooms throughout my life, but I'd never had the chance to try them, nor had I ever seen them growing. But like I said, I was kind of at the end of my rope, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it a shot. And I took what we call a nano dose, which is like a micro dose, very very small amount, and immediate. It was nearly instantaneous, which doesn't make sense pharmacologically. Like the compounds hadn't gotten into been metabolized or into my system yet, but instantaneous relief. Um, and it was as if I was drowning, for a year or longer, and I could finally breathe again. Um, and it's like, okay, there's merit to this. Something's going on here. And I started a microdose regimen, and within 2 weeks, I was 80% healed. It felt like to me. So absolutely miraculous to me. I got my life back again. Um, and and yeah, it was, physical relief, mental relief, spiritual relief. In that first experience that I had, I had a big like psychic download, which was really interesting. That was verified through people around me. So there's increase in intuition and psychic abilities with it as well. But yeah, it was miraculous. And so it was 6 months later that we formulated the business, and we are the first to bring Amanita here to the States. Nobody was doing it. And yeah, not one thing's led to another, and here we are. And I've learned so much more about the scope and efficacy. Originally, it was I wanted to help people with getting off of benzos and with anxiety and things of that nature, but the scope of the efficacy of this mushroom is so much beyond that. Yeah, it's truly incredible.
Wow. That that's powerful. That's powerful. I think in many ways, what you described right just now, it is something like the nervous system is where we actually can somehow connect with our soul's voice. But do you think that after this transition, your intuition has grown louder?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Synchronicities are through the roof. You can, I mean, for me, I have my own spiritual practice and my own evolutionary progress, we'll say, but we find very consistently with people that build a resonance and a relationship with this mushroom. The anecdotes come in daily of people that find that, yeah, intuition increases substantially. Synchronicities increase it substantially. Various abilities that people might have or might be trying to foster seem to be fostered much more effectively and efficiently. So yeah, that's another really interesting aspect of this mushroom that we're learning more and more about as we go. Absolutely.
Hmm. Well, lovely. And talking about your company, MN Nice Ethnobotanicals, this emphasizes ethical sourcing and safety. Why was this layer of integrity so important to you, Christian? And what does it look like in practice?
Yeah. So I mean, I kind of view what I'm doing as it's really not my it's not me that's for everything that we've accomplished, like the everything happens when I kind of step out of the way. And I mean, first off, like, I want if I'm going to be offering a product, I want the product to be as ethically sourced as possible. I want, you know, to support uh, to support the families and individuals that are harvesting for us or foraging for us. I want to help build up all around. But really, I mean, it's kind of it's a ethical and a spiritual thing when it comes down to it. Like I would like to have the largest positive impact that I possibly can on the world, and there are many ways to ensure that that's happening. And one of the big ways is through, ethical sourcing, education, working very closely with the individuals that we work with, and providing as much information and resources for the people that are becoming interested in this mushroom and looking to explore with it a little bit more. So I mean, it's a spiritual thing. It's just kind of it's an integrity thing. It's a spiritual debt in a sense that I'm repaying to the mushroom. And I like to say, yeah, as I mentioned, like I just need to get out of the way a lot of the times and let the mushroom work through me, and let the mushroom guide the process and guide the mission. So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think through this you are trying to spread the awareness in educating people and also protecting them from misusing, because maybe of due to misinformation around mushrooms and then plant medicines and overall natural alternatives for mental health.
Hmm.
Um, Great. So before we wrap up, Christian, if our listeners they would like to connect with you and explore more about Amanita, the mushroom, and also MN Nice Ethnobotanicals, what would be the best way?
You can find us on Instagram or any of the platforms. If you just put in our name, Minnesota Nice Ethnobotanicals, you'll find us. Our website is MN, as in Minnesota, MN nice ethnobotanicals.com. There's all the resources anybody could ever want on that website. One of the things that we really focus on is building the garden, so to speak. So we want to have, as much information and resources available to anybody as possible. And then a really good place to start off is most people will start with microdosing or low dosing. There's information on the website about like how to start, where to get started, but generally people will start with something like the capsules or the gummies, simple, already dosed out, easy to go. Microdosing, they'll utilize 1 to 2 units, 1 to 2 capsules or gummies once to 3 times a day. And then if one's looking for a little bit more of the effects, which are just relaxation, calming, kind of puts you in a flow state, allows one to pull threads that maybe they wouldn't be able to pull otherwise, and then very lovingly and gently nudges one to personal healing and to growth. That would be around 2 to 3 grams is a good starting point, which would be 4 to 6 capsules or gummies. So that's a really, really wonderful place to start. But again, so much information on the website. We're super responsive. So if one has any questions, reach out on the contact form. We'll get back within 24 hours and we're here to help always. So yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll make sure to have all the details and link in the show notes for our listeners to get to the right information and connect with you as well, Christian. And thank you, Christian, first of all, for showing us what it looks like to um, transform pain into purpose. And also, thank you so much for spreading the awareness on the benefits of plant medicine, ancient wisdom, indigenous knowledge. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for opening up your platform and your audience to this. Like I meant, it's a spiritual mission that I'm on, so I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to share and for you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristen, for the kind words. And to all the listeners, if you are walking your own healing path, wondering whether your journey matters, know this that it does. Your softness, your questions, your detours, they all belong. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and stay connected to what's real within you and around you, and to explore more about Amanita's benefits and how to start with, and also to connect with Kristen. Just refer to the show notes along with this episode. And until then, this is Cosmic Confluence, and I'm your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.